What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Rob Save Sports podcast. And today, it's going to be a different episode. We're not going to talk about any sports stories that's going on in the world. No playoffs, no NFL, no nothing, because today, we have a very special guest here today. And I think it would be cool to kind of go over the Last Dance miniseries. It was the series that originally came on ESPN, talking about the Chicago Bulls, the 1997 to 1998 Chicago Bulls, but then also going over Michael Jordan's career, interviews from players. And, I think right now I want to introduce a special guest we have today because we have comedian, actress, host of the SCN Live morning show, and manager of the Movie Trivia Schmodown, introducing Kate Mulligan.
Oh, it's you just let me live out a dream. Oh, I've always wanted to be announced. Oh, if you're a kid that grows up in Chicago in the 90s, that song, I think I did a joke about it. I said it's like if you're like a woman now, it's like instant ovulation. You hear that song, you're like, it's the best. It's so rousing.
It's very iconic, especially.
It's iconic, absolutely.
Like once you hear it, you know
who's
what
coming.
team, you know what sport, you know exactly who it is. So Kate, I know bringing it on here since I'm a native LA kid, grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool to have you on because, you are a Chicago native. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little inauthentic for me to say I'm from Chicago, but I'm from the Chicago suburbs. So I guess it doesn't, LA, it doesn't really work that way. Because, like, if you say, like, I grew up in LA, like, that could literally be any of those. Like, Sherman Oaks counts as LA, or, like, whatever. I don't know where you grew up, but, like, all of those places count as LA. But that's not how it works in Chicago. There's, like, Chicago proper. And there's, like, neighborhoods in Chicago, like Lakeview or Boys Town or whatever. But if you're a train ride into the city, you're not from Chicago. So anybody listening who's authentically from Chicago, I apologize. But growing up in the suburbs, man, tell you who lived in the suburbs was Michael Jordan. So there you go.
So Chicago adjacent, but close enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I remember when this trailer came out for the series, it came out back in 2019 of December. And then it said it was coming out June 2020. And in my head, I was like, why are you doing a trailer for a docuseries 6 months from now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait that long. I'm just going to forget. But then with everything happening, like at the start of the year, they were able to push it a little bit forward to about like starting in like April. So we were able to get it a couple months earlier. And I know I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was watching it.
You were telling me about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I told you, because I think it ended like around May, in the middle of May on ESPN. But then it came out on Netflix in, I think, July,
I don't remember
something
when it
like
was,
that.
but I could look at all of our correspondences.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. Watch it.
Mm-hmm.
You just knew. Because here's the thing. I'm curious about this. You loved this docuseries, but you're from LA. So, like, is it up there with... Because, like, I watched that documentary about Bird and Magic. Was that what it was called? Bird and Magic?
Yeah, it's one of the ESPN 30 for 30s. I love those documentaries. They're so good.
I love those so much. And so it doesn't matter that it's not my team. I had no idea of the history of the friendship between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, that it started in college with the Division I championship. Like, I had no idea about any of this. So I love it, even though it's not my own city series. But this is quite a commitment if it's not your team. But you liked it.
Oh yeah, I would consider, if anyone knows me, I would consider myself like a huge sports nut,
fan.
like all the time, all sports.
Okay.
So when this came out, I knew, kind of like the general, like Michael Jordan, 6 championships,
Right.
6-0 in the finals, like dominating the 90s
Yeah.
and all that. And like him leaving for baseball, I knew all kind of like the general points of it. But when they said, oh, we got never before seen footage back in like 1999 or 1997, 1998, because I was like, what else can you have like to show us?
We've
And
seen
I
it all.
think,
Yeah, like
yeah,
yeah,
it's
you're
like
just
we've
gonna
seen
recut
what
old
else
stuff.
can you
Yeah.
show us? But they really, I think they really balanced it out really well, even though it was 10 episodes, because 10
Yeah.
episodes is a lot, even for like a docuseries.
Right.
But I think the way that they did it, it ended it ended so that you would want more. And I think that's
Totally.
a good way to have the series, to have it so not to have it have too many episodes and then it gets dragged out a little bit, but like just enough where it's like, oh, I just want like one more episode. Like I just need one more.
And I thought it was so. I really thought it was brilliant the way they, like it's technically about that those particular 3 years, but they keep doing parallels back to the past, the previous three-peat. So you're really taking in two narratives at the same time, and you sort of see how there's crossover. And I remember um, my parents not liking, was it Krause or Reinsdorf?
Jerry Krause, the GM.
Kraus, yes, yeah, I remember that. I remember like that was like they're like ah! Like I just but I wasn't really. I mean, when 97 in 97 I would have been 15. I was 15 in 97, right? Is that right? It doesn't seem right. But I think it was the first three peats. I honestly feel like were more impressionable with me. I remember John Paxton making that 3-pointer in the 90. Which one would that have been, Rob?
Let's
Whatever
see.
one that, yeah, there was that game he made the 3-pointer and it was like, thank God he did it. um, but I remember that. I remember being in my basement. I remember being like a 10 or something. I don't know, maybe like just hit double digits and like being like, this is so important. This is huge. Um, and then but back to the Last Dance. I just feel like I thought that was such a cool way to do it, is like visiting two stories at the same time and sort of going like, and also like Jordan's college and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
because I think that team that he was on in college, that was already a stacked college team. Because you had James Worthy, another Hall of Famer for the
yep,
Lakers, and then also Sam Perkins, who
yeah,
was Hall of Famer with the Celtics. Just talking about like 3 Hall of Famers on a college team, like that's nuts. And even
yep,
when in the documentary, I think James Worthy he said it only took all of 2 weeks, and then he knew that Michael Jordan was already the best player he's seen.
yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. God, and also, yeah, I think like that was also like that Michael Jordan. I didn't realize he wasn't drafted first. Like that's just like mind boggling to
People,
me.
yeah, people
Like,
like forget like he was
yeah,
drafted third.
yeah, it's
It
like you would just
was
think like, I don't know. And it sometimes I feel like sometimes it's like always the way, like it does work out that way, not just like even in sports, but I always think like Jennifer Hudson got third in American Idol, and she who remembers who won her season? Jennifer Hudson's a star now. Like Michael Jordan was drafted third, like Roka was drafted fourth, but yeah, I
yeah.
mean it's yeah, that is incredible to me that he wasn't
Yeah,
just
it's what you do with it.
yeah,
That's all that matters. And then no one even remembers that
yeah,
he was third. I mean, number one it was Hakeem. So I mean,
right, which I mean I can't argue with that
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
the second pick. I don't know about the second pick. I don't know.
You who was
It
the
was kind
second
of bad.
pick?
It was a guy named Sam Bowie.
I mean, don't know him, so terrible pick. Terrible pick.
And I remember I saw a documentary about him, and that it was kind of sad because
Oh,
he was such a good player in college, but
ugh.
he broke his leg like twice in
No,
college.
no. This is why college. Oh, God.
Yeah, and then he didn't want to say like how bad his leg injury was because if people knew how bad his leg was, like I don't think he would have gone second.
That's right. You can't.
But it
You might not be pro at all, honestly.
yeah,
If
I mean he did play in the NBA for a little bit, but it's just now he gets compared. I think it's like an unfair comparison with him
Ugh.
that he was the pick right after Michael Jordan.
Oh my God. I just like to me, I would carry that around like a pride flag. I'd be like, yeah, I got drafted over Michael Jordan. What'd you end up doing? Nothing, but doesn't matter. I got drafted over Michael Jordan. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's a
Yes.
fact is a fact, and that is a fact. I got drafted before Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Even
That's
though
how
it
I would
stops from
spin
there,
it.
that's where it
Yeah,
stops. Getting picked
exactly.
over Michael
That's how
Jordan.
I would spin it, though.
Yeah.
One thing I do wish another thing that was very prevalent for me, which I felt like was complete, and I'm sure it was just didn't have permission thing, but there was no Juanita in this at all. His wife during all of this, so it's so interesting to. I feel like maybe we saw like her
Was it
peripherally,
at
like
the
maybe once or twice.
was it at the end of the episode? Like the
Yeah,
end of
well,
the last one?
and then like they
Or it was
have the
just like a little
kids.
bit?
There was like I don't even think they had her at all, did they? I think they just had the kids, the three, like the Michael and Marcus and Jeffrey, not Michael, Jasmine and Jeffrey and Marcus. And that was like even to the extent like I then when I like after I graduated school, I ended up working in the town at this theater program that Michael Jordan lived in, and his daughter was at this theater program, and that was the only time I ever saw him in real life. Was he came to see this play, and I have never ever in my life been so shook by another human being's presence. Like I couldn't tell you what the play was or what it was about. I was just like, Michael Jordan's here. It was just like and he doesn't ever seem that big on the court, like compared to other people. He's massive, Rob. He's massive. I mean, you're just like, the fuck is this? I mean, that's a tall dude. And he like his knees were like above his chin when he was sitting in these theater seats. I mean, they're just so. But I mean, it's just massive compared to. Also, I mean, he was a superhero to me. But yeah, I felt like there wasn't enough of the family talking, and like the fact that there was a woman that was by his side that for every single day of that entire time, and they didn't interview her. I'm sure it's that she didn't agree to it or that he didn't agree to it, but I felt like that was kind of a missing piece for me. It was like, what was it like? He's a total dick, it turns out. Like, Michael Jordan's a dick to his teammates, like, and he's doing it to get the best results out of them. But like, what was that like to be married to? Like, like, how was he at home? Like, if he had a bad day, like, what did you see? Like, it's those are the people that have like extra insight. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what happened to his eyes when he would come home after having an embarrassing game? And like, would you see something change? What, like, how would he take it out on you? Like, I don't know. I would be fascinated in that. So maybe
Yeah.
there's
Missing kind
some,
of like the
yeah,
more personal
yeah,
element towards it. But I think,
yeah,
he was already hesitant to have this out because of the way the series might perceive himself and
yes,
how people might change their perception of him. But
yeah.
I think overall you knew that he was a very tough teammate, but
It's so funny.
his
We
yeah
like I don't
his
think we knew that. I just if you when you look at who he is in an interview, he's not being sassy with anybody. He's like he's an incredibly controlled in the way he speaks. He's obviously intelligent, but it's just so funny to hear him like shit talking with people. Like there was that scene in the locker room when Kraus walks in, and he's like, "Well, oh God, he's just fucking with him." Oh God, what is it? He's like, Kraus, you gonna like, and he's like smoking a cigar and he's just shit. And it's like, I'm like, I don't even know this. I've never heard this voice out of this man before. Because every time we've heard him, he's just like, it was a great game. I thought defense did it. You know what I mean? He just gave like the very standard like response to things. But God, to hear his like personality come out, you're like, oh, like
is like telling
he was
him
a
you
shit
got to lower
talker.
the rim. You got to lower the rim for Jerry Krause to
Yes,
make a
that's
layup
what it
and
was.
stuff like that.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, yes. Gonna have to lower the rim. Gonna have to lower the rim. And just like also like it's so funny like to hear Michael Jordan swearing. Because the other thing, Rob, is like we grew up with him being like the hero of our city. Plus, he was in Space Jam. Like, it was like he was like Santa Claus. Do you know what I mean? So like to watch this and to hear him like how much he's like saying fuck and da da da. It's like I'm like, oh, like I feel so scandalized by it. Which of course now I'm like, of course he, but like he had a very squeaky clean image for, or at least Chicago presented him that way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I think going back to because the whole series was kind of the whole overarching uh, series was about the 1997-1998 season, and that was right after they won back-to-back championships. And like not even before the season started, you had reporters and people coming up to them. It's like, oh, are you gonna, like, is this gonna be their last year with the team? Are you gonna like break the team up? What's gonna happen to Phil Jackson? Like, what's gonna happen to Scotty? Like, all these things already, negative things coming into the Bulls, even with the season not even starting. And
Yeah.
also, with Jerry Krause, him was like, he's like, oh, we might trade Scottie Pippen. I don't know. We'll just see. And it was because it talked about Scottie Pippen was recovering from foot surgery
Yep.
because he held out for the summer to to have surgery and then kind of recover throughout the season.
Yeah.
And his excuse was he didn't want to ruin his summer.
Yep.
And
And
I could
everybody's like,
imagine how upset that would have made the other players,
oh,
especially Michael
absolutely.
Jordan.
Yeah. And I think in some part, like, yeah, I was about enjoying the summer, but I also think like that was also a fuck you to Kraus. That was just a fuck you to them. I mean, the way he was paid, like Scottie Pippen's pay, like that there was that whole episode about that where it was like he was paid like,
I got it right here. He
yeah, yeah.
signed
What is
a
it?
7-year, $18 million deal. So that averages about maybe like 2.5 million a year
He was
for
like
like
the
the second best player on the Bulls, and like
Yeah, and he was like but he was like the 31st best paid in the league, and there was like it was like a crazy number like in the NBA. He was like, I don't know, he was like so far behind Michael Jordan, and like I'm sure like they said like that he had a chip on his shoulder, like of course like that was, but and then like and I know even Michael says like, yeah, I was mad at him for that. I was mad at him for that. God,
yeah.
what a
And because
dumb thing to do.
he they had one episode too talking about Scottie Pippen and kind of his career before he got into the Bulls.
Yeah.
Coming out of like a really small college, not really getting that kind of, not nearly the kind of fanfare that when Michael Jordan came out. And
Right.
so when when they offer, when someone gets offered, even if it's not that much money, but compared to probably what he's been through at
Oh,
that time, like $18 million
of
for
course you
7
take
years,
that deal.
like of
Of
course
course
you
you take
take
that
that,
deal. Yeah.
but then hindsight is like he's the second best player on the team. And when he got there, that is when Michael Jordan was able to get by, the teams like the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons, and like winning the three championships. So his value on the team is so important that it confused me that Jerry Krause refused, like vehemently refused to restructure his contract at all, even though, yeah, I don't know. I think hindsight is like 2020, where if they did restructure the deal, I think that there would have been a better relationship throughout those years.
100%, Rob. I just feel like I've always felt like whether or not you think you should have to do something, if you think it's going to make a relationship better, do the thing. Yeah, they didn't have to. Sure, okay, it's a 7-year thing. But also, like, you didn't know who Scottie Pippen was going to become. You see who he is. Don't you want him to feel good about this? Don't you want him to feel loyal to you? Don't you want him to be in debt to you? Right now, he feels like you're in debt to him, so he's going to say, "Fuck it, I'll get my foot surgery at the end of the season or at the end of the summer, and then I'll fuck up the season for everybody. I have no
Mhm.
loyalty to you. You have shown none to me." I I I would be willing to bet that if they had reopened his contract and renegotiated, even like on a year to year basis, that would have made him feel like I gotta earn this now. But like he earned $18 million in the first couple years he played with the Bulls. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, oh, this is just back pay at this point. This is what I've been owed. I don't know. I just always feel like you just gotta treat the people that work for you
Mhm.
well. You gotta take care of them. They gotta feel taken care of. Otherwise, they're not going to do good work for you.
Yeah, I mean, because it seemed like throughout the series that Jerry Krause kind of was the focal point of the team, like the relationship with the Bulls getting like worse and worse every year because of course you're the GM, so you do make you make all the business decisions and constructing the team to win, but then also it seems like he had too much. He felt like he had all the power in making this team because he said, I think it's one of the quotes he said is organizations don't win, no, team players don't win championships, organizations do, which in terms, yes, but at the same time you have Michael Jordan, Scottie
Yeah.
Pippen,
I think the
Dennis
players
Rodman.
help.
I
Yeah.
think they help a little bit.
I think they help a little. Yeah.
Yeah, and then talking about Scottie Pippen, we can talk about the other player that they had is like Dennis Rodman.
Oh,
And I don't know if you know, Kate, but there's a separate documentary just on him, like
is
talking
it the
about
one?
his
Is
whole
it the?
career. That's
Oh, I
also
don't
on
know.
like
I don't think I've
ESPN.
seen that. Oh no, I've seen the one where he goes to North Korea. Was that Vice or 30 for 30? Where they
That
like
is the 30
actually?
for 30.
It's a
That's I
30
think
for
that's
30.
at the
Yeah.
end. Yeah,
Okay. Where they
yeah, and
like show
his
him go to North Korea and like Kim Jong. Is it Kim Jong Il or Kim Jong Un that loved him?
Kim
I can't
Jong
remember. Was it the
Un,
father or the son?
the son.
The son. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like there's no footage that gets out of North Korea. It's so wild to see
Hmm.
that stuff. And
Yeah, and just
yeah.
his like upbringing too, like being homeless at one point,
Oh, I
and
didn't
then
know
just
that.
like
Yeah.
working as a janitor, and then he had this giant growth spurt during that time, and
Yes.
then someone just kind of said, "Oh, you should play you should play basketball," and then he went to like a junior college, and then wound up going to the Pistons, and he actually
Crazy.
won he actually won two championships there with the
Oh my
Pistons, and
God.
like won
Who? Oh
like
God.
won
That
a
other
defensive player of the year too.
like watching because the Last Dance touches on the dirty Pistons. What are they called? The bad boy
The
Pistons.
bad
The
boy
cheaters,
Pistons.
basically. Yeah. Wow, were they? That was crazy. And you of course were not even born yet, but I don't remember. I watch Bulls games. I don't watch Pistons games, but Jesus Christ, that was crazy. And who's the other Piston that everybody's like, this guy's Isaiah Thomas, right?
Hmm.
In this
Yeah.
documentary. God, what a he just he had a lot of those gifts that are going around now of Jordan like reacting to things. I feel like a lot of that's him reacting to Isaiah Thomas. He said what?
But the original the original scene in the docu series, it was him because I think it was the second three-peat where they played the Seattle Supersonics, and it was with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp,
Oh yeah.
and so he was because I guess Gary Payton did an interview for the series, and so they gave him the interview for Michael Jordan to see, and Gary Payton was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, we almost had a chance, but there's just stuff that didn't go our way, but we had a pretty good chance to beat the Bulls." And then that's where the scene comes where he's
Yeah.
just like he just starts laughing.
Laughing. Yeah. I also feel like Reggie Miller comes out of that thing. The Indiana Pacers. I remember that series. Reggie Miller's another one that has some screen time, and also I just love that Reggie Miller will be like, my sister was better than me. I love that he says that, like she was a better basketball player than me. I love the how humble it is, how humble you have to be to say that. But also, that was the closest the Bulls ever came to not winning. I feel like was against the Pacers in the was it the playoffs or was it actually the finals? I'm trying to remember now.
I think it was the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, it was the okay Eastern Conference Finals. Then yeah,
Yeah,
but
because
Jesus, and you're like, wow, Indiana was the better team. It's almost like you're almost like, wow, how did Chicago pull that off? Because that was in '98, right?
mhm,
That was the Last Dance. Yeah.
yeah,
Woo.
yeah, because Reggie
Wow.
Miller was saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be the one to retire Michael Jordan," and
Yes.
it's kind of like those things that's in like some of the episodes where he talks about where how Michael Jordan perceives things. He can perceive anything that's said to him and just like think he's just being disrespected, because there's a couple scenes in a couple of the episodes. I guess he was playing like a former teammate that was on the Bulls, and he had a good game. And then he goes up to Michael Jordan and he's like, "Oh, good game, Mike." And then and then
Yes.
he go back to Michael Jordan. He's like, he said, good game, Mike." And then he goes out and he goes like scores like 40 points and sweeps it and like
Yeah,
beats the
just
team.
on his own team. It's a
Yeah,
dude on his own team, right? Or no,
he
you're
was
right. It's a
he
former
was on
teammate.
his
Yeah, he
team.
was on
Yeah,
the team. Yes, it was, and he goes out and destroys him the next day. What a psycho! But also, that is what's necessary to be Michael Jordan. I mean, like you can't. This is the thing. Like I feel like I always end up in this discussion. Like like Tiger Woods was arguably for the longest time the best golfer in the world. The best golfer in the world. I don't know of all time, but he was at a time he was the best golfer there was. He won the Master. Like whatever. And then all that stuff came out about him having like 18 women all over the country, and I'm like, yeah, that's part. Like, I'm not saying he's right to do those things, but like a guy that goes anywhere and like that guy's confident, like that's a guy that believes he can hit a golf ball 300 yards and then goes out and hits a golf ball 300 yards because he's got hoes in different area codes. Do you know what I mean? It's like part of what makes him. There's like a hubris with it. There's like a belief that you are, untouchable, and then because you're drinking your own Kool-Aid, you go out and you're untouchable. What happens? Tiger gets caught. What happens? He completely, for a while crumbles under that because like suddenly he doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the confidence, he's been humiliated, all of these sponsors have pulled away. I don't know. I feel like Michael Jordan, like I'm finding out now, like, no, he wasn't a nice dude that like did a movie with Bugs Bunny. He was like he punched down, or whatever that expression is, right? Like
yeah,
he picked on people that because he needed to maintain his status. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's why he was Michael Jordan. Like Michael, like very rarely are you like, oh, this dude was the nicest, and that's why he was so good. No, he was nice because he was a dick. That's my
yeah.
take on it.
I think all the teammates that were interviewed, they didn't they weren't saying he was like a nice guy, but he was, he was a tough teammate to be around. But also at the same time, he always had his he always brought his game to his sort of all-time status level. And so if you're a teammate of that person, like you have to go maybe even a little bit to his level,
Yeah,
because that's what a person like that expects, because he expects himself to
yeah,
play at that level. Then
totally.
so he should expect like his teammates to do the same.
Oh, no question. I think he elevated everybody's game. I think like you can't. I don't think like. I think that he probably elevated everybody's game on other teams too. I think you had to play differently with him. I think. Um, I don't know. I think like. Yeah, you're right. You have to rise up. Otherwise, it's not even. It's not like we were watching games where it was like 100 points to 0 points. Like people had to get a point on him somehow, right? So you have to play better. You have to do more. You have to make your shots. You got to, practice harder.
Yeah, and I think it
Now,
was
yeah.
during the first three-peat, it kind of brought it back to him, because in 1993, like his father just like mysteriously disappeared and just was found like in the lake. And no one they didn't really go into it that much. There's some rumors about kind of like
It
his
was like a
gambling
gambling
addiction or
debt.
something like
Yeah.
that, but nothing's really been there hasn't been really any true facts that are coming out. But I think
Yeah.
that at that time, I think that really affected him, because he kind of lost that invincibility. Like he didn't have like that his father figure anymore, the person that what he said made him into who he is today. And so when he won the three-peat, he kind of felt like there wasn't really anything else to do, like
Right.
getting to that point. And that's why, but also like the last conversation he had with his dad was, possibly playing baseball. And so
Right.
that's when he
When he
first
goes to
retired and then went to go play baseball.
Jordan rides the bus. That's another good
Mhm.
30 for 30.
Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah, I
then,
mean, the dad thing is we remember that he was when you grew up, you like the story was he was found he was murdered on the side of the road, like he had car trouble, pulled over, whatever. And then but then somebody said, "Oh yeah, Kate," like when Last Dance came out, I was like, "Yeah, that whole thing is still so tragic." Um and then everybody's like, "Yeah, but it was Michael." And then the thing that's never been clear to me, it was his dad's gambling debts or Michael Jordan. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that Michael Jordan would have debts he couldn't pay. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it just seems like, well, then just offer them a ticket to the game. You know what I mean? Like, and so also I can't imagine that his dad wasn't able to. I don't know. It just the whole thing seems suspect to me, and I know there's all those rumors, and I hate to speak any power to them because I'm like, well, it just seems unlikely.
Mhm. Yeah. And with him playing baseball, I think because I listened to a couple other baseball experts, and they
Yeah,
said, if he stuck with it, there was a very good chance that he would actually go into the major leagues. Like
the
he
major
was
leagues.
going to get an opportunity to play, which shows you like how good that this guy
Of an
is. That
athlete, yeah.
he's like, oh, I want to play baseball, and then he goes to play and could have possibly played in a major league game, which only I don't think anyone has been a two sport athlete in basketball and baseball, because I know there's a couple for football and baseball, but not
Right.
not basketball and baseball, because those are like two totally different
Yeah,
sports.
there was like Bo Jackson. I remember
Mhm.
in the but was that track? What was that? Was that track and baseball? What was Bo Jackson's sport?
It was
There
football
was
and
like
base
it was
football and
football.
baseball.
Okay, it was
Yeah,
football. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I remember, and then also there's those brothers that went to the Olympics one year. Well, anyway, this won't be good content. There was like a whole like Dan and it was like Dan and Dave were like these brothers that did three sports and they went to the Olympic. Maybe it was the Atlanta Olympics. Anyway, not interesting, but look it up. It will be interesting then. But yeah, I mean, the other thing about going to baseball is like we see like Michael Jordan is like driving to these practices, like showing up with like there's a news crews waiting for Michael Jordan to show up to practices at United Center, and he's showing up in like these crazy cars, and you're like, oh yeah, like this guy doesn't want to go play baseball. Like he thinks he wants to go play baseball. He's having an existential crisis because his father, his best friend in the world, the reason that he was who he was and played basketball the way he did, you know, everything that meant anything to him was gone suddenly. So he's gonna go back and do baseball because his dad loved baseball and that was their first love. They're both their shared love together and blah blah blah.
yeah,
But
and
it's
I
also
think
like, yeah, but
obviously,
yeah, yeah.
obviously he needed a break. I think he
He needed
really
a break.
did need a break,
Totally.
because with all with the death of his father and just constant media throughout really
Yeah.
his entire season at that point,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
just seemed like no sane person can live like that, like
No, I
constantly
know,
go
but
when you
why go?
step out when you
Yeah,
step
but
out
why go? Sorry, you go. You
yeah.
go.
Because when you step out of the outside and you're instantly got cameras in your face and stuff like that, it becomes, I feel like, kind of wears on a person regardless of like your status or stature at some point.
Right. Right. But I was gonna say, like, I just feel like that wasn't like Dickie, my husband, has said this before, like about people like making one decision. He's like, you don't run from one burning building into another. Like, if you want a break, don't go to another sport. Like, you're just like and honestly, I think it is incredible, and I love Jordan rides the bus, but to like, man, if you need a break, like go hit up a spa because like baseball's not easy on your body either, and like they even talk about that in Last Dance, like he got baseball muscles. He ended up having baseball muscle. Baseball, like speed or baseball. Like he had to totally retrain himself to play basketball again. And he snapped back pretty quickly, but it's not that easy. It's like it's a different skill set, and it's a different set of muscles, and it ultimately gave him a slow start when he did come back to basketball. Like he wasn't good at first. Like he wasn't
Yeah,
MJ at first, I'd
because he
say.
came back in like the very end of like the 1995 season, and they did make the playoffs, but then they lost to the Magic.
Yeah.
But then they came they came right back 1996 and went all the way to win a championship, like just like that. Even with like maybe
Yeah.
like a year and a half off, and then
Yeah.
coming back to win it again.
And that's when he was getting really serious. That's like when he was shooting Space Jam. He was like, "All right, the deal is you have to build me a basketball court, and I'm gonna have people come play with me here on the Warner Brothers lot." So he would just have all of these like Patrick Ewing would show up, and like he
Bunch
would
of all
just and then he
stars.
would just shoot during the day, and then at night would play basketball till like 3 in the morning. I mean, it's that is what I wish there was more footage of. I would watch those late night sessions on the Warner Brothers lot. Everybody coming basically to coming to the altar to like play with Michael Jordan. I mean, it's incredible to me.
Yeah, and you wonder if it was kind of maybe not purposefully, but kind of like in his mind to play with all of those guys to like
Oh yeah,
get back to like, oh, I know what to do now. Like when I get back.
totally. And that's the genius of him, right? Is that like so he's obviously like taking a break to go do baseball and then realizing that it was going to be hard work to get back to his his conditioning, his basketball conditioning. Then of course when he gets offered this movie, he doesn't want to turn it down, but also he's like, it's another distraction, just like like I don't want to lose my conditioning, so what am I going to do? And like I'm not going to I guess he did have a trainer, but he's like, I'm going to make the best basketball players in the world come play with me. And then I'm just going to get better that way. And guess what? He did. He murdered that season. Like that season was that 96 or 97?
1996 when he came
That was the
back.
96,
Like
right? When he came
the
back.
full year he came back, and then they
Yeah.
won 1997 and then 1998. And
Yeah.
so throughout the series, it kind of went through, picked some parts during like his career, like kind of like his iconic moments, kind of like the shot over Craig Elo. You talk about finally beating the bad boy Pistons
Yes.
that won twice, that won back-to-back championships before, and then also the final season in Utah playing against the Jazz. He had the flu game, and that
I
story
did
was
not know.
interesting.
Yo, Rob, I did not know until this documentary, and I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention to the news or what. Like I was 15, whatever. But I didn't know that he had been poisoned. Like that's like
Allegedly.
the theory, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But because I also do think that it's maybe it was absolutely poison, but that it was food poisoning because they called it. He had a flu. He has a flu. He has a flu. He has a flu. And so, in for those if anybody who's listening that hasn't seen the documentary, there's this whole episode where they talk about there's one night in Utah, and Michael's. By the way, his best friend George in that series, is that not the most unlikely best friend for Michael Jordan you can ever picture? It's like an old white dude that like doesn't seem to have an athletic bone in his body. I'm like, I think it's just his accountant, honestly. But they're like Michael Jordan's best friend. I'm like, wow, that's quite a title. And like every single time he's on screen, they're like best friend. Anyway, it was his trainer, I think, though, that was with him in Utah, who was like, he wanted to, he was hungry, so we ordered him a pizza, and we should have known. 5 guys showed up to the door. But to me, I'm like, yeah, but that tracks even if they're not trying to poison him. Like that tracks if they're because they know it's him. Everybody wants to see Michael Jordan, of course. Like,
Did they know it was him?
they said that
Because how do you
it
know
was.
that?
Well, I think they knew
Because
that he was staying there. Or I don't know what it was, but they were just like, well, who could possibly be ordering a pizza this hour? And at this hotel, this is the hotel. So when 5 delivery people show up, like, yes, that is suspect from jump. Was it 5? Am I exaggerating? Was
I
it
think it was
3?
4.
4.
I
Okay,
think it
I
was
was
4. Yeah.
exaggerating. 4. Okay. So 4 guys show up, and then the middle of the night, he's 2 o'clock in the morning. shitting his brains out, puking his brains out, fevering on the floor in a ball, and then goes and plays the next day.
And
Wild.
wins.
Wild. And wins. And that I always, this is the other thing too. If you grew up in the Chicago suburbs or in Chicago, everybody had that poster of him doing the. I'll try to describe it since it's just audio listeners, but where he's sort of like giving like a shrug. He's like sort of like I don't like where he's sort of running backwards and like doing the shrug of like I don't know, man. Like it's like this very iconic. Like if you look up Jordan shrug, you'll see it. It's like this. He like makes some incredible shot, and I always thought it was that flu game, but it wasn't. Somebody said what
Yeah,
the
it was a different. I forgot what game it was, but it wasn't the Utah series because I
it
remember
wasn't
after
no.
that flu game, he was almost had to be literally carried off the court
Yes,
because of how
yes.
sick he was.
Yeah, but I always thought like that. I don't know how I'm doing. I don't. I also don't know how I'm doing it. It's sort of like what the shrug says, and always thought like, oh, it must be from that game he had the flu. Like I don't know how I'm doing this, but it wasn't. Anyway,
Mhm.
everybody look up Jordan shrug.
I'm sure there's been memes and gifs and all that
Yeah,
stuff about it, even if
yeah.
people don't know what that's
Ooh,
from.
that is yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can
but I
dig that.
think
Anyway,
we could go in like extreme detail throughout this whole 10-part docu series. But I think to end the show, I think it would be kind of good to have
yeah,
this not a very small debate because I know this
yes,
debate can go on for days and days. Because obviously, last week the Lakers won the 2020 NBA championship with LeBron James, and now that puts him at 4 championships. And now the debate comes back where it's like, who is better, Michael Jordan
yeah,
or LeBron James? So, Kate, I know you're from Chicago,
yeah.
but
I actually think I'm
what?
gonna have an answer that's gonna surprise you.
Okay, go. Let's hear it.
I think when people, I think it's easiest to compare people who played together. So, for me, I think Michael Jordan was certainly the best basketball player of his. I really bristle when anybody says Magic Johnson was better than Michael Jordan. I'm like, you're like, I can't get behind that. There's to me, there's not even an argument to be had there. But I do think that like I think if Michael Jordan was doing what Michael Jordan did then, now, I think LeBron would be winning more championships than Michael. I think LeBron James is a more profound basketball player. But I also, again, there's somebody that's coming that's going to be better than LeBron. People don't get like you don't get worse at a sport, right? Like meaning collectively. So like the reason that world records in track get broken is because the shoes get better or the training gets more whatever, or there's more science to know that, oh, don't eat carbs before so we're not going to see like people getting slower. Like the reason world records in track get broken is because sports advance, because technology advances behind all of this. So to me, I think like there's going to be a day when LeBron James is not going to be the best basketball player, and like that's super exciting because who's it going to be? And like I think Kobe had a profound career. And I do think like when you look at like Kobe playing Michael Jordan at the same time, like Michael Jordan was a better basketball player when they were playing together, I thought. But I think Kobe's career and what Kobe was able to pull off was as impressive as Michael Jordan. You know,
Interesting.
I do think so. But also it's also probably to like the tragedy of Kobe Bryant too has made me reflect on him more. I guess I'm not being very articulate about it, but what I'm trying to say is I don't think we can compare a LeBron James to a Michael Jordan. I don't know that if you put Michael Jordan and LeBron James on the court together today, like what if we were to do that, like 90, let's say 96 Michael Jordan, 97 Michael Jordan on a court with LeBron James right now, who wins? Who wins one on one?
God, it would be because if you look at the two, it's like strength wise, LeBron I probably has
LeBron.
the strength advantage.
I think so. And
Shooting,
just
like
the bulk
offense,
advantage.
yeah,
Yeah.
and shooting like offensive moves, I think Michael Jordan has that over LeBron.
Yeah.
Because if you it's kind of hard to try and if you played 1-on-1, like who would win? Like
I know.
I
But some
don't, I
people
don't really, I
I
don't
don't
really
even
know.
know.
It's kind of
I
like a
don't either.
hard thing because either one could be the right answer and be the wrong
Yeah.
answer at the same time. But I think you're right with LeBron. His game goes towards more of like Magic Johnson, like his playmaking ability, his ability to make a lot of people better in like a different way
Yes.
than Michael Jordan. I
Yes.
think that plays a big part. To me, like it's so hard to jump over someone's success when they're the first person to do it.
Well, that's the other thing too. LeBron
So,
is LeBron because Jordan was Jordan. On some level, I
mhm,
do inherently believe that.
yeah, in their eras.
In their eras, that's right. Yeah. And I don't think there's going to be anybody that grows up and doesn't say like Michael Jordan is an idol of mine. Like I think people are still going to see what he did and how he sort of pioneered basketball, especially at that time. I guess here's the question for you, Rob. Do you think there was anybody that played, and it can be a 10-year frame around when Jordan played? Is there anybody that played around the time of Jordan that you think was better than Jordan? Because Dickie will tell you it's Larry Bird, and I'll tell him to take a hike.
Uh, it's tough. It's because I think Michael Jordan's career was, I think, right at the peak of the NBA as far
Yeah,
as being like almost like a global fan base at that point, like back
yeah,
in like in the 80s, because that's when the Magic and Bird
yes,
with the Celtics and Lakers, that was back in the
right,
80s. So I think that's when it picked up. But I think when Michael Jordan came, that's when it really shot up most as far as like an audience
right.
here and also
The
across the
world, yeah,
world.
yeah,
So his impact, it's weird. His impact and LeBron's impact is different,
mm-hmm,
but in the same time, it's pretty much the same in a way because I think that Michael elevated not only the sport but just also like shoes
yeah.
and kind of like the style of play.
And I think not to say that Magic Johnson wasn't a huge star, and that Larry Bird weren't huge stars, but I think it also showed sponsors, showed management, showed what how popular a basketball player, how important an icon a basketball player could be, and I think things changed accordingly because of that. Because I think and also probably the way that they drafted, like who's gonna be our next star. Because I'll tell you what, I think Steve Nash is an incredible basketball player, but he was never gonna be Jordan, you know. And also, I got to tell you, I think Steph Curry should be in the conversation too. I think what Steph Curry does is incredible. Um, but I guess I don't know. I'm making it convoluted, but I feel like there's a lot of Michael Jordans now. There's a lot of big stars now, and I think there was there was a handful in the '90s. I think Isaiah Thomas is definitely one of them for sure. I think Michael Jordan. I think Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, obviously all from that team, but also like Reggie Miller. PJ Hardaway was like had Sprite commercials when I was like, like there was a lot more. I feel like basketball players had a lot more star power for good or bad, I guess. And I guess that is sort of like for me, I'm sort of like, we we can't nobody laid Michael Jordan groundwork for Michael Jordan the way that Michael Jordan laid Michael Jordan groundwork for LeBron James. I don't know if that makes sense, but like Michael Jordan really sort of paved a lot of what ended up being his. So I always will think, God, he's so pivotal in that way. But that like he sort of, I'm not saying that there weren't stars before him, but I think he really got a true dose of it.
Superstar
And
status.
superstar status, yeah. And not that Magic wasn't, but like I don't know. I guess I just am talking in circles now. What I mean is that like I think there's something extra impressive about what Jordan did in his time. But I also have to say that like LeBron in this time, LeBron didn't even go to college. LeBron went straight from high school to the pros. Like, you can't argue with that guy. He's just, and I also have to say, in addition to like basketball shorts are different now, like, man, those shorts used to be short and tight. Basketball players were really lean. Like, Michael Jordan was a lean, muscly, sinewy dude. And now, like, LeBron is bulk. Like, they're just bulk. Like, Shaq was always obviously bulky, but I don't know. There's just, I think it's transitioning. Like, what makes a good bat? But like, if everybody on the team's going to be big, you got to be big. You can't be John Paxson anymore. You know, you can't be B.J. Armstrong anymore.
Yeah, I think it's trying to compare the two. Like if you
Yeah.
pick one or the other, that doesn't mean you hate the other one. Like
No.
you
No.
don't think that there's a tier below the other person.
Yeah.
But I think there are some good arguments that I've heard over the
Yeah.
past week. There's some like terrible arguments that I've heard
Yeah.
comparing the two. I think both of those two had a very big impact in the NBA, but also like sports in general. Kind of like
Yeah.
the way that we watch sports, the way that we analyze it, the way that we market it, and things like that. So I think, but in the end, I think there's only one person that can make that impact to start another superstar,
Yeah.
and that is Michael Jordan. I
Michael
think
Jordan. Yeah.
he's too iconic, too good of a player, too has too much of a resume to
Yeah.
for someone else to like supersede him. But who knows? Like LeBron's still playing.
LeBron
He
is still
still
playing.
looks like he can play a
Yeah.
couple more years. And so I think right now it seems like it's still TBD at this point
And,
to
and
really see who is the best.
yeah, and I guess the real question is what is the question? Is it the most iconic basketball player? Because I would say that is Michael Jordan to me. The most iconic basketball player of all time is Michael Jordan. The best, you know, there are stats. Like, LeBron's stats are better. like and it may be because he didn't go to college, so he had that many more years to accrue NBA stats. It may just be that he's a better. So to me, I'm like, well, if you want to talk about the stats, it's LeBron, you know. But again, like, I guess I would ask you the question, Rob. Kobe and Michael Jordan, they didn't overlap a lot, but they did overlap a bit playing. So because my qualification is, well, you got to play at the same time in order for me to compare you. Who do you think is a better basketball player? Not more iconic, because I think you would still go Jordan on that. Who do you think is a better basketball player, Kobe or Michael?
Ooh, that
That's a tough one.
that is a tough one because I think Kobe and MJ are very similar because I think Kobe
Absolutely.
emulated his game exactly to Michael Jordan. So I
And I think,
think,
yeah,
the same kind of mentality where it's like, I'm going to help you, but I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm going to show you where I can go and I need you to get there. So, like a similar mindset
yep.
with Michael Jordan. I think it's hard. It's hard to say, but it still feels like Michael Jordan was still really the better player. Not
I
you
know.
could say like
I know
by a little bit. It's like it's close. It's so hard because when you have like these top superstars and they don't play in the same era,
yeah.
and then they play each other, but one's like past his prime, one's like
Past his
entering
prime,
his
I know.
prime.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't. But I do feel like Kobe was on the cusp of Jordan's era in the sense that they played together 1 year, maybe.
It
Rook,
might have been a couple
Kobe's
years because he came in 1996,
okay.
but he didn't play that much.
No, and he had a horrible. I mean, Kobe. That documentary on Kobe is amazing, um, but about how he had such a horrible freshman year, and then just was like, well, I'm deciding to be good, and then made himself just a rock star. Yeah, he's. I feel like he's got a same. I do feel like he's so similar to Michael Jordan in that way, like that charisma of playing, that magnetism, that also I think even like in body shape too. Like, they both were those sort of like lean, sinewy, like just pure athletes. Just like, I don't know.
Yeah, six
Yeah,
six six, like 210, bald
yeah,
head. lean
Yeah.
muscle.
Yeah, just like whereas
Same.
like Shaq looks very different. Shaq's like 800 feet tall and 700. I mean, he's just a different player. Tony Kukoc looked different. Oh, okay. Sorry. There's stuff happening at my house here. So I think
Yeah,
we
because I
solved.
know.
I think we solved all of the world's problems
Yeah, I
today.
think we did. Yeah, I think we could. I think we're all good now. I think the world's gonna be in a better place now. That
Yeah,
now
I
that we
think
had
so.
this conversation.
That's right. And I'm sorry had such meandering thoughts. I should have put words together better, but I've been talking for a bit, so sorry.
No, that's totally fine. It's good to kind of get just like that raw information out, even though
Yeah,
if it might not make a little sense, but that's fine. We're all
yeah.
not.
I mean,
No one's
I
no
don't
one's
know.
perfect.
Yeah, certainly not me. The
Michael
other
Jordan
thing is
maybe, but we'll see.
maybe Michael Jordan. That's true. The other thing we didn't get to talk about, and I'm just going to bring it up real quick because I do have to go, and I know you do too. But is the Steve Kerr thing is the thing that I'm still the most shook from. Is that Steve Kerr? For those of you who don't know, Golden State Warriors coach
Head
now,
coach,
right?
yes.
Head coach. So you might know him from that. But Steve Kerr, huge, monumental part of the Bulls' later years in this documentary, especially never addressed with Michael Jordan that he also lost his father. And the way he lost his father was assassinated in Lebanon. Truly,
Beirut, I
he was
think.
there. Beirut, sorry. Yeah, Lebanon, right? Isn't it? Is Beirut not in Lebanon? Uh-oh.
I'm not
Sorry.
I'm not good at geography.
Okay, I was going to say, I hope. Beirut. Capital of Lebanon. Phew. Okay, just checking.
Okay.
But anyway, but yeah, he that to me is like that was such a I never knew that about that situation, and I wonder if since this documentary's come out, I'm sure they've both watched it. I wonder if they have sort of connected on it. I would love to know
Yeah, I think
because
that would be another interesting like
yeah,
discussion with the both of them.
totally,
Like,
totally,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. But
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I hope I provided any sort of information.
no, it was a great. I think it was a great conversation.
Good.
It was nice. Yes, it
Good.
was. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
Even with we could probably go on and on, but
I know.
I know you have to go.
I'm
But
so sorry.
Kate, I appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
for
Thank you
the
for having me.
podcast.
Hey, good luck saving sports, Rob.
I will do my best. I will try.
And go Lakers. Oh, sorry, Clippers. Who do you like? You like
The
Clippers?
Clippers.
Okay, so, but weren't were you not? Were you like me with the Cubs? You're like,
I
yeah, it's my city, but
was
I'm not happy about it.
I started I think when I got into sports, that was back in 2000, 1999. So that's when the Lakers were at like the peak. So that's when I started. But when I got older, I kind of shifted to the Clippers. So I've been there ever since. And
But
this year was
you did
tough.
not. I was gonna say you did not. So you didn't celebrate the Lakers win.
Nah.
This is me with the Cubs. I'm a Sox
Yeah.
fan. So like people are like Cubs. I'm like they can jump in a lake. They can jump in the lake.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's always next year.
Yes, there's always next year.
I say that every year.
Listen, everybody's saying about everything right now. There's always next
Mm.
year, right?
Yeah.
We
Next
hope.
year can't come sooner.
Yeah.
But Kate, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate you having me.
if you guys are listening, you can watch her on SEN Live in the morning at 10 a.m. And also the movie trivia showdown. Is it today? Is there an episode today on Friday?
Not with me, but yes, there is one. There's a live match today. We have a pay-per-view today with Stacey
Okay.
Howard, and it's Corruption versus Shazam and Stacey Howard. But I guess
Okay.
I don't know when this will air. But anyway.
Yeah, you can go check that out too.
Yeah.
And then also, could you ask Roka if he wants to come on, even though I don't have 5,000
Oh yeah.
followers?
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell Roka I did it. I think he said he would. Didn't he say it the other day?
We'll see.
I
Like
think
I'll
he
I'll
said
watch
Rob's
the
a good
show and
guy.
then we'll see. Yeah, but we're gonna head out. So
Yes.
if you guys want, the Last Dance Netflix series is on Netflix. It is also on ESPN. But again, Kate, thank you for coming on,
Thank you.
and thank everyone else for watching. And we will see you next week on the Rob Save Sports podcast.
Save them sports, baby.